So my name is Danielle Dagenais, as Adrian mentioned, and I'm a bat biologist. I've been working with bats since 2011. And I love the species. I have lots of passion for them. And today I'm going to talk to you about the roles that I play in the Greater Vancouver Area. And then I'll talk a little bit about bats as well. Sorry, Carmen, I don't have too much on bat boxes, but I'm happy to answer any of your questions or provide you any information after the presentation. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's three main programs that I work with. One is the BC Community Bat Program, the South Coast Bat Conservation Society, which we call bcbats, and then EcoEd Consulting, which is mainly school programs that I run. So the BC Bat Community Programs, we're here to provide advice and guidance to people. So we're all about bat management and conservation, and we're here to help the general public and businesses find out all the information they need to deal with bats. We also have programs that are engaging citizens and citizen science. And then we have the white nose syndrome monitoring program that we have. So I am the regional coordinator. My region extends all the way from Langley and then all the way up. It used to be Squamish and now it extends north of Pemberton. We just don't have anybody covering those areas, so I've taken that on right now. So anybody from those regions, as well as anywhere else, I had someone contact me from Alberta the other day. I just answer questions and then I'll send you to another regional coordinator if need be. So the three programs that I'm mainly involved with the BC Community Bat Program is the white nose syndrome surveillance that we do, the BC annual bat count, which some of you may know about, and then our new program, which is Bat Friendly Communities. So the BC Bat Community Program started in 2014, and this was because of white nose syndrome, which I'll talk about in the next slide. So we needed a way to monitor our bat populations before this fungus hit our coast. So we wanted people to go out there and report any bad activity that they were seeing in the wintertime. So this involves dead bats. It involves any bats that you find roosting on your wall or in your wood piles, as well as any bad activities. So I have been getting calls since about 2 weeks ago that people are starting to notice bats being active right now. So this has caused a little bit of concern because it's a little too early for them. So we just put out a press release for the municipalities around the border so we could get more people out there reporting more bad activities so we can see if this is a cause for white nose syndrome. So we also, back in 2017, started another program, which is the guano analysis. So I just highlighted a region on the map right here that shows that white nose syndrome has jumped over to the West Coast in 2016. So that following winter, we started collecting bat poop, guano, from our roosts that are in Delta and other border communities to see if they are carrying the fungus. So I'm talking a lot about white nose syndrome. So what exactly is white nose syndrome and why do we care and why do we have this program? So white nose syndrome is a fungus that is found in caves where hibernating bats are. It was brought over by somebody that was visiting Europe. So it is found in caves in Europe. We know that it was brought over. We don't know exactly how it got brought over. But basically in 2005, 2006, that winter, people went out to a cave outside of Alberta, New York, and started finding a bunch of dead bats like you see on the slide in the snow. So what it does is the fungus is in the cave, it's growing on the cave walls, and when the bats move into the cave to hibernate, the fungus starts to grow onto the bat's skin. It makes a very good medium for the fungus to grow on, and that causes them to wake up from hibernation more often than they normally would do, and it would cause them to burn through their fat reserves. So basically the bats come out of hibernation and they go looking for water or for food. They can't find any and they end up dying of starvation and dehydration. So it moves every year. When it first hit the coast, it was moving about 200 kilometers a year. It has slowed down a little bit. These maps just show the spread. So you can see all those little dots show you how much it has moved after 5 years, 10 years, and then in 2018. We don't have a recent spread map for last year, but it has moved down into California. And so we're worried that it has moved into BC. So how severe is this? So they stopped counting at about 6 to 7 million bats they know have died. Some species of bats are highly affected by the fungus, and survival is as low as 0% in some hibernaculums, up to 25% survival. So to give you an example, when it moved into Quebec in 2010, there was a cave where scientists have been studying bats since the 70s, I believe. There was 5,000 bats that normally hibernated in this cave. And after that first year, only 8 survived. So big impact on some of the species. And because of that, we have 3 species in Canada that are now endangered because their populations have plummeted so much. So from November 1st to May 31st, the BC Bat Community Program is out there. I'm on the radio, we're putting out press releases, we're giving presentations, and we're saying, if you see any bats, report them. Send it to our email, Vancouver@bcbats.ca, or there is a phone number, or you just go onto our website, which is bcbats.ca, and there's a report button, and you fill out the form. And any dead bat that you find, we collect them and we send them to Abbotsford, and they test them for white nose syndrome. As of right now, none have been confirmed with white nose syndrome. So another program that we do is called the BC Annual Bat Count. This is a program that started with the initiation of the BC Bat Community Programs in 2014. And this was to supplement white nose syndrome surveillance. And that's because in BC, we don't know where our bats are hibernating. So out east, they go into caves, these large caves. Scientists go there, they can take pictures and they can count individual bats, and they can see how many bats are dying every year. We don't know where our hibernaculums are. We know about very few. And so by going out there in the summertime and trying to get roosts that are long-term and doing monitoring year after year, we get an idea of population trends. And that population trend will give us an idea if our bats are plummeting and if there's a concern, and it could possibly be related to white nose syndrome. So the map shows you all the sites where we do annual bat counts in the province. That map was from 2019. So a couple more sites were added last year. These counts are done at homes, at businesses, and at bat boxes. So the picture there is a volunteer and I at Stanley Park at the Rowing Club. They have a small roost there that we monitor. It's been, I think, 4 years that we've been at that roost. This just shows you data from my region. So I started as a coordinator in 2017. This just shows you how many roosts that we monitor with bats. So every year we're adding more and more locations as we do more outreach and get our name out there. People are starting to report their bats. And then you can also see that not only are we monitoring more roosts, but we're also doing more counts at each roost. So the way that the program works is that we ask people to do 1 or 4 counts at each roost. So in June 1st to June 21st, we try to do 2 counts. And that's when the females are there getting ready to have their babies. And then we go back mid-July until the beginning of August, and we try to do 2 more counts. So ideally, we want to do 4 counts at each roost. And that gives us an idea of how many females were there, and then how many babies they're able to have. And then the last program that I'm involved with the BC Bat Community Program is the Bat Friendly Communities. This is a very new program. It just got launched in 2018. And it's basically a way for us to engage municipalities to go that step further. So instead of just getting the public out there and interested in bats and helping us with management and conservation, we're bringing municipalities into it. And we got the idea after the bee initiatives and the bird initiatives that you see that municipalities are doing. So it's a certificate that is fairly easy for municipalities to achieve. They have to do 3. They have to be able to promote learning, so to the public and to businesses in their municipality, and teach people about bats. And they have to join our Bat Week every year, which is in October. We also ask that they provide information to businesses at City Hall and on their website. And this is more for new businesses who need permits. So pest control companies, roofers, contractors, people that are normally the first ones to find bats and report it to the homeowners. We want to educate them and let them know about the program so that they deal with the bats properly. And then the last thing that we ask municipalities to do is to create habitat and enhance habitat for bats in their area. So there's a picture of me handing the certificate to Richmond, who became our 3rd bat-friendly community. So Dawson Creek was the first one. Peachland was the second one in 2019. And then last January, I presented the certificate to Richmond. And so every year, the municipalities have to provide us with a report and let us know what they're doing and how they're meeting those 3 criteria. And we are working with other municipalities currently that are in the process of trying to obtain this certificate. And we do have one that will be announced quite shortly that we're very excited about. So now moving on to the South Coast Bat Conservation Society. So I joined that organization in 2016, taking on a role as the outreach coordinator and the secretaries. I was a volunteer for it back when it was the South Coast Bat Action Team back in 2010 and 2014. Basically, there's 2 bat enthusiasts that decided that they needed a program to promote bats when they discovered the roost in Stanley Park that they wanted to protect, and they're doing research on. And so they created the South Coast Bat Action Team. And then when they went their separate ways, it kind of sat there, and myself and 5 other bat biologists got together, and we renamed it as the South Coast Bat Conservation Society. And we focus on research, conservation, and education. I do a lot of the field work for the bat research, which I really enjoy doing. And then I mainly focus on education throughout the year. So this shows some of the research that we do. So a lot of the research involves acoustics. So basically, bats are really hard to study. They fly fast, they fly high, they're dark, they're hard to see. They have echolocation, so they really like to avoid nets. Birds are much easier to capture. And so a lot of our studies is basically putting out these big, tall microphones and leaving them out during the summer and catching bat calls so that we can determine if there's areas that are important for bats or what bats are in an area. And then this here is a microphone attached to the roof of my car. And those are driving transects. So we will drive roads and record bats. And that's part of a continent-wide, a North American bat program, NABAT, we call it. Basically, they've divided North America into grids. And every June, lots of people are out there driving around. And so the South Coast Bat Conservation Society participates in that. And then we also will do transects outside of June as well to gather more information. All of these pictures, though, are related to a recent study that we just did, which was looking at the ecosystem services that bats provide to our farmlands. So this is the first study that was done in BC, we believe in Canada, because we didn't find any research on it. I just recently came out of doing my master's where I was looking at bat activity over vineyards in the Okanagan. And me and my colleagues wanted to look at what are the benefits of having bats over the farms in BC, because in the States, there's a lot of studies about how good they are for cotton and corn industries, saving the industry billions of dollars trillions of dollars nationwide when you think about rice paddies and other places. So really important at eating those insects. And then from that, we produce this, it's called the Farmer's Toolkit. And so it was distributed to some farm communities and letting farmers know how to enhance habitat on their farms to attract bats. And that's available if anybody wants a copy of it, if you're interested. Another big thing that we do is we study the bats at Dease Island. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the roost at Dease Island Regional Park, but it's a large roost. It's one of the largest roosts that we have in British Columbia in a building. There are 2,000 females that come to the building. They start coming in about April, end of April, and then they're there until September, usually mid-August, sometimes into early September. And then by the time summer rolls around, we've got about 3,000 bats coming out of the attic of this house, this heritage house. So there's two species of bats that live in the attic together. This one is called the Yuma myotis. And this one here is the little brown bat. And that's one that's endangered from white nose syndrome. And so bat research that takes place there is looking at roost fidelity. So are the bats sticking around in the roost all the time, or are they switching roosts, which they tend to do, and we know that they do. So they do leave and come back throughout different nights. We tag them. So we've, not sure who's doing this, but this is first time I tagged a bat. It was pretty scary. This massive needle going into the back of the bat near its head. It's a little intimidating at first, but what we're doing is we're inserting a very tiny little tag between its shoulder blades. And then we have readers going into the attic that will let us know what the bat is that's coming in and out of there. And then over here, this picture, we're swabbing the bat. So we've got cotton tipped or polyester swabs, and we basically are rubbing the inside of the wings and the outside of the wings, and we're looking for white nose syndrome. So this got added as part of our white nose syndrome surveillance. So at this roost, we will collect the bat poop every spring to check it for white nose syndrome, because as they come out of hibernation, they groom themselves and then they poop out the fungal spores. But we also will go up in the attic and capture a whole bunch of bats, and we'll also swab them to see if they have white nose syndrome. So it's an extra thing that we're doing at this roost in particular. This roost is a great location because of so many bats and having easy access to them, that we collaborate with universities, with organizations in the States, with the ministry, with BC Community Bat Program for their white nose syndrome surveillance. So lots and lots of collaboration. It's a great place, and we always need volunteers to come and help us. And hopefully last year everything got canceled because of COVID, but hopefully we can start again this summer. And if you're interested in volunteering, just let me know. And then my main role with the South Coast Bat Conservation Society is doing bat education. So I do bat booths. We have a few events that we go to every year, like the Stanley Park Train, except in COVID years, Owls Open House, Britannia Mines, Booktacular events. Most of our bat booths are in October. I usually do about, I don't know, 20 bat booths in end of September to the first week of November, because that's when people have bats on their mind. So it's a great way to get people out there and interested in bats and learning about bats. And it's also a great way for me to put on my other hat as the regional coordinator for the BC Bat Community Program and say, hey, November is right around the corner, report your bats to us. It's important. We need dead bats. I also do these bat box building workshops, which are great. We make sure that bat boxes are built correctly, and we try to do it in partnerships with municipalities. So when I first started with the program, And they first started launching these bat box building workshops that got kind of brought over from when it was the bat action team. They just basically gave people plans and they slapped together a bat box and left. But we don't want people to just put up bat boxes and not report it. It's really important that they're built correctly, that they're installed correctly, and then that they're maintained and monitored every year. That maintenance and monitoring is key to helping the BC Bat Community Program monitor our bats, and it's going to really help us with white nose syndrome once it hits the province. So I do a public event with the Squamish River Watershed every year. And then I do smaller groups. So for example, if any of you have ever been to Mundy Park in Coquitlam, right by the pool, you'll notice there's 4 bat boxes. Those were built by the Girl Guides in collaboration with the South Coast Bat Conservation Society and the Burke Mountain Naturalists and the parks in Coquitlam. And so we all got together and we formed a great partnership where I ran the workshop with the girls, the Burke Mountain Naturalists, helped them build their guano catchers and helped them select all their materials for installation. And then the Parks Board actually installed the parks, and they're the ones who have committed to doing the maintenance. And then the Girl Guys have committed to doing the monitoring every year, which is a great project. And I've done it with a couple other Girl Guide groups, as well as a couple of local organizations as well, garden centers. And then we also do bat kits and bat boxes. So try to lift this up. It's 23 pounds. It's a little heavy. So this is a proper bat box. So you can see how big it is here. These are the South Coast Bat Conservation boxes that are based on a design out of the States that have proven very successful. There's bat boxes that you can get at stores that are quite small. Even this one is very common. I'll try to show you in the camera. It even says that it's made by the Organization for Bat Conservation. But if you look at the sticker, it's made in the States. And this one is actually a really bad bat box, and it wouldn't be used by bats, our bats in BC. So it's really important that people understand what a proper bat box is. And that's where the BC Bat Community Program comes in, and South Coast Bat Conservation doing these programs and providing documents to people. So if you're interested, I can give you lots more information about those. And then the last thing I want to touch on before I go into bats is EcoEd consulting. So the BC Bat Community Program is a grant-funded program. SC Bats also, we're constantly applying for grants and trying to get funding. There's very little funding to do bat work, and there's so much demand for school programs and for on-site visits and bat box assessments. And there's just no funding in the programs to do it. And so because of the need, I created my own business and I provide these services to people. So I do a few bat box consultations for golf courses. I have a great partnership with the city of Burnaby, and we've just recently installed these boxes right here, which is awesome because it's right by a roost that I monitor through the BC Bat Community Program, where bats are being evicted and they're being excluded from a place and they need a place to go. And these are big brown bats, and they require a little bit different criteria than our regular bats that use the bat boxes. So we built these bat boxes with a bit of a different design, slightly different design. And they were just installed in November. So I'm really hoping that they use them this summer. But the main thing I do is school programs. I have 1-hour programs for pre-kindergarten to grade 6 that are based on the BC curriculum. And it's all age appropriate, and they're very well received. And lots and lots of requests. It's too bad that it's hard to get funding, but luckily last year I was able to get an NSER grant, and I was able to go to a lot of schools, which is really good because then the schools don't have to pay for it. So why do all these programs? Why do we even care about bats? So bats are very, very, very important animals. Very important wildlife that is often misunderstood because of all these misconceptions that there are. So there's the ooh factor, like it looks like a mouse. Lots of people will see bats and they get this creepy feeling over them. They just don't like them. Bats are not related to mice at all. If you look through the chain of phenology of where a bat sits, they're more closely related to humans than they are to rodents. They are very different to rodents. They don't chew, they don't travel, they don't carry, and they don't nest. We call it roosts because they hang in an area, they don't carry material and build nests everywhere. They will not fly into you, they're not blind. So a lot of people are scared when they see bats flying around that they're gonna fly into them or attack them, that they have really bad vision. They actually have really, really great vision. It's just because they use echolocation that a lot of people think that they don't use their eyesight, but they use a combination of both. And there is one species of bat in BC that doesn't echolocate very often. They use their eyes mostly to hunt. So I've been around lots of bats emerging from roosts. And if you are not panicking, you're staying still and watching how beautiful it is as they come out. They just swoop right past you and they do not bump into you. I've never had a volunteer get hit by a bat. Burke Mountain Naturalists, who does a lot of monitoring programs, have never had a volunteer get hit by a bat as well. Now, having said that, there is the odd homeowner that gets hit by a bat, but it's just, they happen to come out of the garage as a bat was flying along. But it's very rare that a bat will run into you. Why they circle around your head is because you're breathing out carbon dioxide and you're attracting insects. And so they're flying around you and they're actually eating those insects and they're helping you. Nothing to do with long, beautiful hair. And then, of course, people think that they're going to attack you and suck your blood because of the vampires. But we do have vampire bats. There are 3 species. They live in South America. They don't live in Pennsylvania. And they feed on livestock mainly. They will feed on seals and some other animals, but they're mostly going after the livestock. So bats have a great, great diversity and abundance. They're found all over the world, except in the Great North and the Antarctic, where it's really, really cold. So the smallest bat is super tiny, 17 centimeters. So this is my hand to give you an idea. It's called the bumblebee bat. The largest bat in the world, you probably can't see. It'd be longer than my arms. So 6 feet is what we're going for. And these are flying foxes that are found in Asia and Africa, Australia, that eat fruit. So one of the main thing that people think about when they think about bats and the importance of bats is that they're pollinators. And worldwide, yes, they are pollinators. They're very, very important pollinators. This picture is a picture of the banana bat pollinating the banana tree. So they will pollinate over 500 different plants. For any of you who like tequila, they're very important for the agave plant. They're the only animals that pollinate it. There's also 300 different fruits that they'll spread the seeds and they help with soil nutrients. The main thing that bats do, 70% of all bats will eat insects. And so in a variety of insects, and they're helping our ecosystem that way by protecting our plants and protecting humans because they're eating insects that are carrying diseases. Another thing that a lot of people don't know about bats is their importance for medical and technical advancements. So studying echolocation, studying hibernation of bats, just different behaviors that bats have. There's lots of different advancements that they've done. So blind people have learned to use echolocation. There's a YouTube video of a guy riding a bike using echolocation. He has a school where he teaches other blind people how to use echolocation. The vampire bats, saliva is super important. With that, they made blood clot medication, and they call it Draculin, which is kind of funny. And then we got sonar, radar, ultrasound, has all been done studying echolocation of bats as well as echolocation of other animals. So lots of importance. So we got these very important wildlife species that are hugely diverse and abundant throughout the world, but many, many, many of their populations are declining. And they have lots of threats. And so they have these natural threats. Of course, you've got predators out there. Cats are a main predator of bats in urban areas. Winter for hibernating bats is extremely, extremely hard on the pup that first winter. Less than 50%, about 30% of pups survive their first winter. But if they get through that first winter, bats can live to be 40 years old if they don't get anything else happen to them. So we've got lots of persecution. People see bats and they kill them. It's still happening in BC. We had someone who sprayed a bunch of bats 2 years ago full of pesticides to get rid of them out of their house. We got lots of people who are evicting them out of their homes. They don't like them in there. There's lots of bats around the world that are being hunted, and some of them are being hunted because they're poor communities and they need food. Other ones are being hunted because it's a luxury item on the menu. And then there's lots of just habitat loss, habitat alteration, and disturbances. So especially going into caves will disturb our bats in the wintertime, causing them to use up that bat reserve. Pesticides will affect the bats, but it really affects the young. So it goes straight to the milk and goes straight to the young, and then it decreases their survival. So our bat species, lots of people think because they're small and they look like rodents, they have lots and lots of babies. Bats only have one baby a year. So it's really hard for their population to sustain, especially when they're declining so heavily. And then our migratory species in particular are being affected by wind turbines. So about 400,000 bats a year are dying from wind turbines. So in British Columbia, we have 17 species of bats. And all those colored squares shows you that about half of them are listed. So these are all bats that the populations are in trouble. So listed species are ones that we're monitoring because their populations are dropping. So blue listed is at the bottom where we're concerned about them. And then red, they're threatened. We're more concerned about them. And then the orange yellow square is endangered species that we have. So they, this hoary bat here, up here, the red bat, and the Brazilian free-tailed bat, and the silver-haired bat are the ones that will migrate, and those ones are affected by wind turbines. But the silver-haired bat is interesting because it migrates and it hibernates, so it will do both. And it's also a carrier for white nose syndrome, so it's not affected by the fungus. But because it will hibernate in some of our areas in Alberta and BC, if it's exposed to the fungus, it can bring it into a cave that where little brown bats are, for example, and highly affect their population. So just to give you a general idea of what our bats are doing. So they have a very, very short fall where the males and females get together and swarm, and that's where they exchange sperms. And then they're hibernating about 5 to 6 months of the year in rock crevices and trees, in caves and mines. And then they wake up in the spring and they migrate to their summer habitat where the females are going to congregate. Most of our species, females congregate together and they use their heat to produce that one pup. So all the females try to have as many that one pup, but there's a lot of females that are non-reproductive. And then a lot of those pups do not survive that first winter. So in migration is where people can encounter bats. When they're migrating in fall and in the spring, they like to hang out above people's doorways. I think they feel secure there because you're going in and out of your home. Lots of people call me and think that the bat is dead because it's been there for 3 days and hasn't moved. But it's just hanging out and it's waiting for better weather so that it can move to its hibernaculum or to its summer roost. They also like to hang out in patio umbrellas during that time as well. But it's the summertime, really April to beginning of September, where most people are aware of the bats and they're seeing the bats and they're active and they're encountering them because bats are hanging out in places where people are. So I just showed a cool video of a bat coming in, grabbing an insect with its tail and bringing it up to its mouth to eat it. So just trying to make sure you guys are paying attention, bringing in this video. But I just wanted to let you know that in the summertime, the females are out there and they're eating their entire weight of insects every single night to produce that pup and to lactate. And make that pup grow as fast as it can before it needs to hibernate. So for example, there's some stats on the slide, but for example, one female bat can eat about 1,000 insects every night. So as I said, trillions of dollars worldwide in pest control services. And this just shows you two of the pests that we have in BC that the bats are helping to eat. So this is a natural habitat where you can find bats. They love hanging out under loose bark, in cracks, frost cracks, for example. The migratory species, so the hoary bat, the silver-haired bat, and the red bat, they like to hang out at the end of leaf clumps. And they don't form big colonies like our other species. They'll go to the trees, and that's where they'll have their babies. Rock crevices, root rods are really important in the wintertime. And then caves. This is a picture of Bratton Caves in Texas, which has one of the largest bat colonies in the world with millions and millions of free-tailed bats, which we have in BC. So free-tailed bats, they'll migrate with the pests for the corn and cotton industry. And they have moved into BC most recently in the last couple of years. And so those caves have the fungus. And so when they're moving into BC, they could potentially be bringing that fungus with them. So yeah, we're monitoring quite a bit. However, lots of the natural habitats that you see for bats are not found in cities. There's a lot of places like the bats that like to normally roost in rocks. There's not many rock outcrops in the cities anymore. And so they're finding alternative places. So they'll go underneath bridges. They love to go under sidings, underneath shutters, soffits, fascia boards, roofs. They'll hang out on chain link fences. This is a bat in an umbrella that someone had found, called me. Sorry, I'm not sure what's doing that. Lots of places that will hang out in your homes or on your property. And then there's also man-made structures. So this is one of the SC bats bat boxes up on a snag. And then this is called braden bark. And that is for our tree roosting species, where it's a fake piece of bark that they wrap around a pole. So with bats going to all these different structures, people are living with bats, and you need to know the risks associated with it. So lots and lots of people fear bats because of the misconceptions, but they also are concerned with all the diseases that bats bring to them. And that's just another myth. So the only disease that bats carry in British Columbia is rabies. It's a very, very serious disease, and yes, you need to take it seriously and be aware that it does exist, but it's very, very little risk. Oh, not sure what's going on here. There we go. Very, very little risk. So less than 1% of the natural population actually carries rabies. The problem is that rabies comes in two different forms. So there's a passive form and there's an aggressive form. And you can't tell if a bat has rabies. The only way to tell if a bat has rabies is to kill it and dissect it and ship its brain to Alberta so they can tell you if it has rabies or not. No, we're not going to get people to do that. And so we just caution people to keep away from bats. So lots and lots of people live with bats. There's no concerns at all as long as the bats are out of your living space. So if they're on the outside of your home or if they're in your attic and they're sealed off from the living space, bats are going to keep to themselves. You won't even notice them there. Bats have been at the rowing club they were there for 14 years before the manager even knew that they were living there. So people are, if you're not looking for the signs of it, they're often mistaken for mice because their poop looks like mice. So people put out mice traps when in fact they have bats. So the risk for rabies is really low. Basically, seal them off in the living space, never touch them with your bare hands. And if you ever have an encounter, you call the doctor right away. COVID is a huge thing on everybody's mind right now. And lots of people are blaming bats for COVID. But there is actually no proof that bats have actually caused the pandemic. There's a bat that carries a very similar virus in China. But if you compare the genome of that virus to the SARS virus, and you take, for example, the genome of humans to chimpanzees, that's how it's kind of been compared, is that, yes, it's similar, but they're very different. There has been lots of research happening in the last year, inoculating our species with COVID to see if they'll carry it. And there is a paper out there on research that they just did with a big brown bat, proving that it cannot carry the SARS virus. And so it's not found in any bats that we have in North America. And we don't know if bats caused the pandemic. The main concern with homeowners is the guano. So the bat droppings that they find on their patios, on their doorsteps, they're very concerned that it has lots of diseases and it's toxic and it's gonna rot away the wood. The guano is not toxic. It has no diseases with it. But because it's often found like on your doorstep where there could be mice as well, we tell people when you sweep it up to wear a mask just because mice feces does carry diseases. It makes a great fertilizer, so you can collect it and put it in your garden. There is a disease that is found in bat droppings, but it's only found in Eastern North America. So the purple in this map shows you where it's found. And if you just kind of draw a line up into Canada, that's where it's found. So it has not, it's called histoplasmosis, and it has not been found in British Columbia at all. There is a document that the BC Bat Community Program has that talks about, I can't remember, I think there's 6 or 7 different people across the province that have been living with bats for years. And they just kind of give you an idea of how they have to manage the colony. So for example, the rowing club in Stanley Park, they don't do anything except sweep off the stairs every morning. Other people that have them in their attic, they have to do a little bit more work, but it's very manageable to live with bats if you want to make that commitment. So basically, the message I want to get out to you guys is that there's lots of things you can do to help bats. They're very important wildlife, and they need our help. Their populations are declining. We need people out there getting education about bats like you guys are, and then advocating for the bats afterwards. So telling people about the information that you've learned here so that you can get other people interested in bats. And then, of course, they're coming to the programs and asking for advice. Reporting any roosts, any activities, any dead bats is really important. So the roosts are really important to help monitor our populations because we can't monitor our caves like they do out east once white nose syndrome hits. Dead bites are super important because that's the only way we have to check for white nose syndrome. So we want to collect as many dead bats as possible. So we ask people to retain them for collection. And when you call or email us, we tell you how to do that. Any encounters you have to go through the public health authority, and they need to assess it, whether you need to get rabies shots or not. As I mentioned briefly with the bat boxes, always seek advice with bat boxes. So there's a lot of programs out there that talk about bats or do school programs or other stuff with bats, but unfortunately, a lot of these programs are not educated in bats, and they don't know what bats need. There's a program that's been running for years where they put bat boxes in schools and then they put them up. The bat boxes they build are these little ones here because it's easy for small kids to put together. Bats would never use this. So it's a shame. And so the programs I'm with are trying to work with these people to educate them, because we think it's great that they want to get out there and tell people the word about bats, but we want them to do it in a proper way and to make sure that whatever they're building is going to be appropriate for bats. And of course, if you ever come across any bats hanging out on your property, try to minimize disturbances and let people know that they're there, and keep cats away and keep them indoors if you can from sunset to sunrise. Just for interest, I thought I'd put up this map. This is just a couple of areas in Vancouver where you can find bats. So the Stanley Park map, the red stars are actually roosts. So the pavilion and the rowing club. And then the hatch ones in Stanley Park are where you find lots and lots of bat activity. If you want to head out there in an evening, it's lots of fun to watch. So I just thought I'd put that map out there in case you guys live in those areas and want to head out this summer and go see some bats. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Danielle. That was quite the load of knowledge. Thank you so much. I definitely would encourage anyone who has questions for Danielle to please ask them. We actually did have some in the chat as you were speaking, Danielle. So maybe I'll just kind of like go from the top bottom, and then we'll kind of open it up to live questions. Does that work for you?
Perfect. Yes. Great.
So first, so Carmen asked, she's not here now, she had to leave, but she asked, how do researchers keep themselves and their shoes clean moving from roost to roost? Do you have some sort of protocol?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so moving from roost to roost, as well as hibernaculum, so cave to cave. There's also protocols. So there's they're posted on the ministry's website. I don't know if the BC Bat Community Program has them posted, but they're put out. It's like North American wide because of white nose syndrome. Right. And it used to be a bleach solution that we had to wash everything in. And now they have a list of a whole bunch of different chemicals that will work, that will kill the fungus, as well as really, really hot water will actually kill the fungus if you soak it in hot water. So we have to clean everything. And we have to, sometimes we'll wear Tyvek suits and just dispose of them. So going in and out of the Dees Island roost, we wear booties on our shoes and this whole outfit that we can just discard afterwards. Because at that time we'll be going from lots of different locations.
Right.
But there's caves on Vancouver Island that I visited a couple of years ago. And they have a very, very small population of bats hibernating there, and they had nothing. And so since the visit, the BC Bat Community Program contacted them, and they now have a foot bath, and they now talk a little bit about it with the public, so that if you're actually visiting caves, they have procedures for you to do as well. And they do that in some of the states as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's makes a lot of sense. Definitely have to make sure that sanitation is looked after. So second question, how do bat boxes need to be maintained? This is from Rosanna Higgs.
So maintenance is fairly easy. So we just want to make sure that they're in good condition for the bats. So going out there in about early April, you want to make sure that there's no holes from woodpeckers. So if their boxes are made out of cedar, untreated cedar, woodpeckers love those and they love putting holes in them. So you need to board up any of those holes, make sure that there's no drafts. Mm-hmm. The main thing that we're looking for is wasp nests. So wasps will get in there in early spring, and you have to clean those wasp nests out so that the bats can move in. So the ones that the BC Bat Community Program makes, they're quite narrow. I don't know if I can lift it up and show you, but it's very, very narrow openings in there. Mm-hmm. And that separation between the chambers kind of helps deter the wasps a little bit, but you can still get wasp nests in there.
Right. I guess I'm just scrolling through the questions here, and Rosanna asks in regards to the bat boxes, what is the actual intent of the bat box? Do they hibernate in them?
No, so the bat boxes are for females only, and they're for summer habitat. It's a place for the females to go to have their babies. So when people are excluding them from their homes, those are the female bats that are there having their babies in the summertime. And by putting up a bat box before you do the exclusion, the idea is that they move into this bat box instead.
Mm-hmm. And Danielle, the Red Star in East Vancouver, was that Trout Lake?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, Michelle asked that, and Megan confirmed that it was Trout Lake. I'm pretty sure it looked like Trout Lake. Yep, that's right. And Rosanna asked as well, is there anything we can do to prevent the spread of white nose syndrome?
The easiest thing is if you go into caves, is to decontaminate your equipment. Mm-hmm. So for the general public, white nose syndrome doesn't come to us. It's not transferable to other animals. It's just specific to the bats while they're hibernating. Right. But if you visit any caves, like if you go to the Horn Caves on Vancouver Island or go down to the States once the border opens, you want to be conscious that it's there. Because a lot of the places in the States, especially like if you're going out to Idaho or Montana, a lot of those places are actually owned by the people. It's not federal land like in Canada. And so it's up to the people whether they want to follow the protocols that the US Department is asking them to do. So if you're aware of it, if they don't have anything, then you take off your clothes, bring a change of clothes, bag them up, and clean them properly at home if you plan to visit another site.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we have a question here from Jennifer, and she asks, are there still bats in the Susie mine in Oliver?
I have no idea.
They were doing a study there in about 1980 when we were doing geology fieldwork there with UBC.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know anything since then, but they were using, it's a little tiny mine that we were using for studying, and there were some guys studying the bats there.
Okay. Yeah, there's a bat biologist by the name of Mike Sorrell in the Okanagan. I'm not sure if you recognize that name or not. But I know that there are some mines in the Okanagan that are being used by bats. I don't know the names of the mines. I could find that out for you if you're interested, though. It wouldn't be hard. I could just send out an email.
Great. Wow, lots of questions. This is great, everybody. I really appreciate it. And also, I guess we have a couple of text questions, and if you want, definitely feel free to unmute yourself and ask after these two. Okay, so next one we have here. Sorry, 1 second, just lost my place. Megan asks, why don't we know where bats hibernate in BC?
So they, out east, the way that the geology is that the caves are just easy, I guess, bigger, easier for them to access, larger. And so there's these huge congregation, thousands and thousands of bats. In BC, we have lots and lots of areas that have really, really small rock crevices. And so that's what the bats are using, is they're using those smaller rock crevices. There are some mines and some caves, but they're not being used extensively, like the Horn Caves on the island. They thought for sure there'd be a bunch of bats there, and there hasn't been. We had a cavers program, North American cavers program, where we were partnered with spelunkers to go map caves and look for bats. And they hardly found any in the caves in BC. And there are some quite large ones that they ended up finding. And there were no bats there. And so it seems like our bats in BC prefer, from the winter studies that they have been doing in the last 4 years, they prefer small rock crevices, they prefer trees, and they prefer root rods. And so it's really hard to find when it's small colonies.
Wow, fascinating. Rosie Pickard asked, I'm a landscape architecture student, and I'm wondering if there are any landscape or garden features that can support bats.
Yeah, so gardening, so different types of vegetation. So anything that blooms at night, anything that is white or yellow, that is open at night, will attract insects that will bring bats in. And then there's also water features. So because bats are hibernating during the day and they come out at sunset, they're very dehydrated and they look for water. They look for fresh water. So you need an area that's got an opening that's not totally planted with vegetation, because the bats drink while they're flying. So they need to be able to come in and access the water and then fly out. And it needs to be clear. It can't be full of algae or vegetation. So if you can put in some water features, put in some plants that bloom that are fragrant at night, or white, or yellow, or deciduous trees are really important for bats. Aspen, cottonwood, cedar. We do have a list on the BC Community Bat website. In the Bat Friendly Communities document, at the end, there's an appendix that talks about all the vegetation that is important to bats.
That's wonderful. Danielle, as well, I guess there were a couple other reports you were mentioning that people can reference. Is that all on bcbats.ca as well?
BC Bats does have a lot of reports. It depends which ones they want. Most of the information will be there. Okay. If not, then I can send them links. The Farmer's Toolkit is specific to the farms. Mm-hmm. That is on the SC Bats website, not the BC Community Bat Program.
Right.
But I have a PDF that I can send to people as well.
Sure. Yeah. If you can send that to me, that would be great. And then I'll get in touch with folks who have signed up here and send that to them. So.
Okay.
So Gia Lee asks, is it a good idea to install bat boxes in an urban public park, say on top of a 5-meter pole, but with people walking around on ground?
Yeah, so it really depends on where the park is. So yeah, 5 meters is high enough. What we want to do before we put up bat boxes is we need to make sure bats are in the area. So people have to go out at night and have to make sure that bats are there. If bats are there, then they'll find it. So you can't attract a bat to a bat box. They find it on their own, and they find it when they are in need of habitat. So the biggest thing is to know if the bats are there. And then the location of the bat boxes is fairly important. So there are some criteria that the bats require. And so I'd have to look at the park and see if it would be a suitable location. Things to think about is like lighting, vegetation, how much foot traffic, and people's houses. So people don't like to see these. So we often try to find a place like behind a big tree that will be protected from visual complaints. So there's lots of things that we consider, because what we ask people do is to put up these 4-chamber bat boxes, which are quite large. They're 31 inches high. And so little tiny boxes like this that don't work are easier just to slap up anywhere. But these bigger ones, which are the ones that we recommend because of thermal regulation. So the temperature from the front to the back of the box, which is 5 inches difference, will change by 10 degrees Celsius. And so because it's changing temperature so much, the bats need more space so that they can move up and down or back to front to get that perfect temperature to grow that fetus.
Oh, amazing. Danielle, you're a wealth of knowledge, and the questions keep flowing. So we have another one here. Bruce asked, do cats catch bats at night?
Yes. Yes. So cats are the #1 predator of bats. Cats can hear the bats calling. So they use echolocation when they're flying around to find that insect. So it allows them to find an insect from a far distance, like 30 meters away. And as they're letting out these high frequency calls that we can't hear, cats can pick up on them really well. Bats are creatures of habit, so they go to the same place to drink, they go to the same place to feed. If the insects are there and they know it's there, they'll just keep coming back. And the cats just wait for them. And they're really good at pouncing on them, and they catch a lot of them. And so we ask people, if you have cats and you have bats in your area, please vaccinate your cat, for one, because chances are your cat's going to bring a bat home to you, and then you're going to have to deal with it. And that's most of the encounters that I get in the summertime, from June to early July, is people who have cats that have brought a bat home to them and they don't know what to do with it. They've mistaken it for a mouse or something. They touch it with their bare hands accidentally. And so, yeah, just be aware that they are great, great predators.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, and Bruce also asked, is there a reason to have the guano catch screens under your bat houses?
Yes. So the reason is for, well, the main reason that we recommend it is so that you don't disturb your bats. So the easiest way to know if your bat box is being used is you look for guano in your guano catcher. So a guano catcher is just a wooden frame that has like mosquito netting underneath it. And it's right underneath the bottom of the box, but it's right off the ground. So it's about 4 or 5 feet off the ground. So you just walk up to it and you look in there. If there's droppings, you know bats are using it. Instead of having people go and shine flashlights up into the bat box, bats are very sensitive to white lights. Their eyes are sensitive. And so if you keep shining flashlights up into the box, you're going to cause your bats to leave. It's also nice because then you have a way to catch the guano so it's not falling or anything that you don't want it to fall on. And then most people who put them up will put them up in a way that they can take them off easily and then just throw it in their garden. And you got free fertilizer, which they sell and make lots of money of in South America. Yeah,
that was a big part of, I mean, it was a big part of the colonial economy, but I'm sure that hasn't changed too much. But
yeah. Well, apparently they use guano to make bullets in World War II.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they've been harvesting it for a very long time.
That's fascinating. I just wanted to ask everyone else here, does anyone else have some questions? If you want to maybe unmute yourself, turn your camera on, that's totally awesome. So please feel free. I have some questions if no one has some. So, but yeah, I would like to have anyone else who hasn't been able to ask something to do so now, if you'd like. Got some hearts and some thank yous from Bruce. Says, thank you, Danielle. It was a great presentation. And I totally agree. Well, I actually have a question, Danielle. So I'm quite fascinated in sound. I'm an artist as well, like besides doing this, the work that I do here. And I'm really curious about the types of microphones that you use to pick up the sounds of these bats. From what I understand, they have an ultrasonic frequency range, listening range, or?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of the microphones. I just know the equipment. So this is the one that I use for all my outreach programs. It's called an Echo Meter Touch, and it just plugs right into your iPhone.
Oh wow!
And this is awesome. The ones I used during my masters were massive microphones that were on tripods.
Yeah.
Carry around. They have lots of different types of bat. They call them bat detectors. Lots and lots of different types and styles. This one is the most popular one. It came about in about, I want to say 2013, 14. I met the guy who designed it at a bat conference. And it's so simple to just plug it into your phone, and then it actually displays the call for you.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know any specifics about the microphone itself. I just know that it takes the high frequency sound, and then it displays it so that we can hear it. Right. So that when we're out there, in my talk, I had that video with the bat calls in the background. So that's what it sounds like to us when they bring it down to a lower frequency. Right.
I guess on that note, Michael asks, can you tell what species of bat it is by the bat detector?
They would like to say yes. The company likes to say yes. But the answer really is no. Unfortunately, the bats that we have in British Columbia are very, very, very similar. And because of that, their calls are very, very similar. And so this shows you a readout. So if I were to put it into my computer program, this is what the bat calls would look like. Vertical lines that go down from a high frequency to a low frequency. And those could be one of 4 species that made that sound. So it's really, really hard to tell. This bat detector has all these filters that you put in there. And then when you're out there with the public, it says, oh, look, it was a big brown bat that just flew by. But there's been lots and lots of research, and it's about 40% accurate. So catching the bats in hand and putting them on zip lines, and then recording them and testing the program, it's about 40% accurate. I did do acoustic studies in Africa. I did a bunch of analysis of calls, and their species call very, very different. And so those ones were easy to tell apart. And you could say, yes, definitely, this is this species. So it really depends on where you are in the world. There's some places in Europe, again, very different types of species. So they call very differently. And you can say, yes, for sure, this is this species, but not here in BC, unfortunately.
And I guess Michael, on the same note, asks, do bats make different types of calls that you can notice with the bat detector?
Yes, they do. So they make 2 main calls. So they've got their search call that they'll make, which is like a tick, 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 tick. That gets sent out every millisecond as they, so they send out their calls in pulses, and they're searching for their prey. And then as they catch the insect or as they approach water, they'll make what we call a feeding buzz, and it's like kind of sound. Just recently, like very, very recent, there has been lots of work done on silver-haired bats, and they have found that silver-haired bats sing. They have these mating calls, mating songs. And so there are other bats in the world that will make songs as well. And we didn't know that about our BC bats. And it's just a brand new thing that is a hot topic that we're talking about right now, are these songs that people are starting to collect.
That's incredible. Is there a way that has there already been a sort of like database or sort of online resource or anything where people can listen or to these recordings? Or
you can Google, and like there are some websites that will give you some recordings, but there isn't a database yet, but there is talk about it, as far as I know. Right. That's open to the public. There's of course researcher database, but as far as I know, I don't think there's any open to the public. But if you do Google like some bat calls, you will find like the odd one will come up.
Right. Does anyone else have some questions?
I I have one question, Danielle. I live close to Trout Lake, and I was just wondering if you have any idea specifically where the bats are and what type?
No, I don't know what type. I haven't spent much time there at night, but my colleagues have. And so they've told me about it. I could ask them if they've recorded them. But if you hang out along the water, they'll come in and they'll feed there. They'll drink and then they'll feed over the water. That's usually a good place. If you go to any park and you go to the water first, that's usually where you'll find them. Or if there's big cottonwood trees or big coniferous trees, you often will find hoary bats feeding really high up above the coniferous trees. So you can look there as well.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks for your presentation.
Oh, no problem. So I do have, I brought some bats with me that I usually show when I go do presentations. I can try to show you them here and see if it works with the camera. I've labeled them so that you guys can, so these are what our local bats look like. Can you guys see that?
Yeah, I can see that. I think we can change the view maybe for speaker view. There we go. Yeah. Whoa.
So this one here with its wing out, that's the largest bat we have in Canada. It's called a hoary bat.
Wow.
So it just shows you what our bats look like. So they're pretty small.
Incredible. And I guess like you were mentioning with the studies with the white nose syndrome. So as of right now, there hasn't been it detected in BC yet, or?
No, it hasn't been detected yet, but it's been 5 years since it's jumped to the West Coast, and it's been in Washington. Every year it spreads to different counties in Washington. There's been no reports in Oregon, but there have been reports in California. And there's been reports in Montana, just right underneath Saskatchewan. So right now it's in 35 states. So bats with the fungus are in 35 states and 7 provinces. So it's basically east all the way to Manitoba. But it just got reported in Montana. And so it's very, very close to hitting Saskatchewan and BC. But there are 4 other states where the fungus has been found in caves. But they haven't detected it on any bats yet. But they know that the fungus has made it to those 4 other states, which is likely bats that brought it to those 4 other states, or it could be cavers, people, tourists as well.
Yeah, it seems quite difficult for things of that nature where it's like kind of like a cycle, right? So like if the bats get it and then they're doing their thing, then it'll start to propagate in other locations and.
So the bats carry it with them out of hibernation. The fungus likes cold, damp, dark places. And so as they move out of their caves and they move to where they're going to go in the spring and the summer, they carry it with them. And eventually it dies off of the bat. But if it's nice and all of a sudden it gets cold, they may go to a rock crevice and then it stays there. And so it's constantly moving with the bats.
Does anyone else have some questions? We have just about 5 more minutes to kind of wrap up. So yeah, I guess if please ask if there's anything that we haven't been able to touch on. I think we touched on a lot of different things tonight, which has been absolutely incredible. So Danielle, thank you so much again for your wealth of knowledge. I've certainly gained a lot. And I definitely would like to be in touch with you. Carmen was mentioning to me that we were donated a bat box. And so maybe it'd be nice. I can take some photos. I'll send it to you, see if it's something that is actually suitable, because you're definitely mentioning that is important for that to be properly constructed and installed. But anyways, please, if anyone has some more questions, we have a few more minutes here. And I'm not sure if you're seeing these, Diane, but a lot of people are saying a lot of awesome things. Everyone's saying thank you. It's a great presentation. Oh, and we actually have another question. There we go. My scrolling is being kind of crazy right now. Okay, there we go. Michael is asking, any sense of the insect decline is impacting bats in BC?
We're not sure. Definitely something that is on our mind with, you know, birds declining, but we're not sure. We don't really know much about the population of bats in British Columbia. It wasn't until really the BC Community Bat Program started their program in 2014 where we started doing monitoring at roosts. They have done quite a bit of monitoring in the Kootenays. There's a Kootenay group that has been monitoring their bats quite a bit, but BC as a whole, there hasn't been much monitoring at all. Lots and lots of research. Most research happens in the Okanagan. So there's an idea there a little bit about populations. But it's hard to say anything without knowing our populations. And so that's why the BC annual bat count is so important, and try to get as many roosts as we can and have these long-term monitoring so that we can try to detect population trends. But I mean, all our bats in Canada, they only eat insects. So if there's no insects for them to eat, then obviously it's going to affect them.
Right. Well, yeah, that's super important to know. It's quite fascinating to kind of contextualize the beginnings of research like this, because yeah, I think not just for bats, but lots of other environmental indicators. For example, like in the States, in Oregon in 1991 was the first time that forest researchers got together to map out what was left of old growth, for example. And so it's like, you know, it's really fascinating to kind of just see like where we're kind of at, and at all of these initiatives being so recent. And so that's why it's super important for us, you know, being witnesses tonight, you know, definitely we want to share what we learn and help as much as we can, because every bit of information helps, and will go a long way. So that being said, any final questions, folks? Let's see here. I'm just gonna double check if it was written. Oh, Danielle, if you could, actually someone did ask me about your the farming guide. Yeah. So if you could send that to me, I can send it to them, or maybe if you'd like, you can just write down your email in the comments so people can maybe get in touch, and if they have other questions or. Yeah. My microphone. Oh, and thank you, Michael, for your kudos. I appreciate your comment. And there you have it, folks. So Danielle's contact is in the chat. So it's Vancouver@bats.ca. BC Bats. Vancouver@bcbats.ca. Thank you so much, Danielle. And with that, I think we'll wrap up. Danielle, thank you so much. I said it like 3 or 4 times tonight, but thank you so much for your knowledge. It's really been quite mind-opening and really, like, yeah, giving to context of like how important bats are has really changed my perspective on them. And I definitely, I don't think I was maybe necessarily afraid of them before, but definitely another reason to be appreciative of them, and definitely something I'd like to facilitate in Renfrew Ravine, for them to flourish if that is somewhere that they'd like to live. And thank you so much for being patient with everyone here. Thanks everyone for coming. Of course, if you have any feedback, please let me know. My email is at here, Adrian@stillmoonarts.ca. thank you so much for being here. Again, please let your networks know about the initiatives that Danielle and her colleagues are doing. It's very, very important what is being done, as we all have just learned. And yeah, like we're definitely looking forward to more. So Danielle, please at any time, if you have, if you want me to share any events that you're doing within our network, please forward it to me and I'll send it across.
Perfect.
And yeah, we'll be in touch soon. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for getting back to me. And yeah, and we actually, yeah, we made this quite a fruitful event. So yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, that being said, good night, everybody. Danielle, I'll talk to you soon. And yeah, take care, everybody. Be safe out there. We're almost through this, you know, hopefully. And it's not because of bats, believe it or not, or, you know, so there we go. It also, I guess, very last and important kind of housekeeping thing. I have been recording this this presentation, and if you don't want to be, if your questions don't want to be on YouTube, for example, please email me and we'll make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. So my email is at adrian@stillmoonarts.ca. It's here in the chat. But yeah, this will be uploaded just as an archive so people can see after the fact, because there are a lot of folks that weren't able to attend tonight. And so yeah, if you have any issues, please let me know. And with that being said, thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful night, and we'll see each other soon, hopefully. All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.